Carolyn here. Felix, please, if you can join us in the first row. James Tong? Okay, please. All right, so our four presenters today are Felix Agayo from Solar City, Steven Stenner from American Honda, Carolyn Humphreys from SunPower, and James Tong from Clean Power Finance. James, please. So the first presenter is going to be Felix Agayo.
I never thought my last name would be so challenging. In high school, they called me Water Me, or Aguayo. But it's Felix Aguayo. I'm in the structured finance team at Solar City. I spend my days thinking about reducing cost of capital and tax equity more specifically. But before I joined the finance team, I was running the East Coast project development team for commercial installations in the Northeast. So I'll talk a little bit about the challenges for customer acquisition and more particularly about the cost of capital. Solar City is really building a network aimed at delivering the new source of energy of the future. We call it better energy because it'll be cheaper than the traditional utility power source. And it'll add transparency and optionality to the customer. What we're starting off with is really a 20-year customer relationship agreement through solar. No money down, save money day one. Very simple proposition. At the residential level, huge uptake. People get it intuitively. And what's driving that innovation is really standardization of contracts with customers and technology on the backside in our processes. What Solar City gets out of it is, like I said, a 20-year relationship that we intend to monetize over that 20 years by adding energy efficiency, PV, electric vehicle charging stations, battery storage, etc. So there's a two-way value proposition here between us and the end customer. Currently, we're serving 47,000 different rooftops. We're in 14 states. We essentially develop a new relationship every 5 minutes. Since I joined the company, which is about 18 months ago, we were around 1,200 employees. We're now at 2,800 employees, so we're growing really aggressively. But the addressable market is huge. If you look at the far to your right, you'll see that our market penetration right now is less than 1% of what we think are addressable rooftops. And with the general macro scale value propositions, increasing rates across a number of different utilities, despite the fact of abundant natural gas, and the continued decline of solar installation costs, particularly now that we've seen the hard costs drive down aggressively, we expect soft costs to start coming down over the next couple of years. The addressable market is going to continue growing. So on customer acquisition, I think some of the earlier presenters have talked a little bit about all these things. I kind of grouped them in a different sort of order. The first one is really an uneven playing field. We're across all these jurisdictions, faced with different rules, different timelines, different incentive programs, huge costs of capital to be able to service all these markets efficiently. So So we have an internal group of about 50 employees that do nothing but rebate processing. Not many organizations have the capability of setting up a team like that. A huge opportunity for local governments to really cut out some incentive costs out of the process. The incumbent utility monopoly in some cases we find to be adversarial, and as renewable energy penetration into the traditional utility model accelerates, we expect that resistance to increase. But at the end of the day, I don't think that the relationship has to be an adversarial one. I think it's one that will evolve over time. And utilities that are progressive in their mindset will see that there's an opportunity for their business model to change dynamically and move away from a rate-based, exclusively rate-based methodology to one where you're participating in risk and upside as well. The other bucket of customer cost in acquisition is who is the customer? When you have a number of facilities that may be owned or leased, that question comes up more often than not. And all you have to do is look at big box retailers as a classic example. A large number of them lease their properties, and some of them lease them for terms of 5 years at a time. It's very hard to make an economic proposition to stick when you have that kind of dynamics. And there's no easy way to allocate the risk reward between the tenant and the landlord under the current model. Credit quality is also a huge obstacle. As we'll see when I get to the financing side, when it comes to financing these transactions, right now, the cost-effective money is where you have high credit quality. So investment grade rated entities get much better financing than non-investment grade rated entities. And the market segment that right now is by and large ignored is the middle market PV sector. And then lastly is site adequacy. And there are a lot of tools that are being developed so that you can use satellite imagery to get kind of a rough idea of what will pencil and what won't pencil, but you still have to do a physical installation, or you have to review design plans to be able to make sure that you can put PV on them. Lastly, the transaction inefficiencies. The two biggest ones are contract negotiations and financing. We have advocated a model of standardization, so much so that recently we published our residential power purchase agreement, and we basically say, use this model, steal it from us, sell it, but we want to standardize contracts so that when we're in front of customers, we don't have to spend a month negotiating 2 or 3 terms on a one-off basis. That will drive to lower costs. And in financing, the big challenge there is the tax equity, and I'll get to that later. Where we see on the cost of customer acquisition really being driven lower is by aggregation. So what we've done in a number of cases is we've partnered with cities to drive larger pools of people in a cost-efficient way to adopting solar. These are some examples that we participated in. Solar Lancaster, Solar Beaverton, Solar Phoenix. These were all initiatives that we did with the local cities to advance PV technology, and we participated in Solar National, which we talked about earlier. In late 2011, we launched our largest aggregation initiative. We call it Solar Strong, and it's basically putting PV on privatized military housing across the country. At the time when we announced this program, which we estimate will cover about 120,000 homes, the total installed number of systems in the country, in the US, was 165,000. So with this program alone, we were nearly doubling the market. A lot has changed since 2011. The other thing that we're doing is we're partnering with large companies that can bring scale to our offering. Home Depot has been a resounding success selling through that channel. And without going into details for the others, the last one that I list is a relationship with Honda, which Steve will talk about a little bit later. But that has been transformational. One thing that we're seeing is a dearth of participation by the corporate community in an advancing solar initiative. And Honda has stepped up to the challenge. Not only are they putting their money behind it through a fund with us, but they're also advocating carbon reduction, their carbon initiatives throughout their organization. Lastly, on cost of customer acquisition, I would point out that one of the things that we're seeing that's very exciting is a new trend in California. It's called community choice aggregation. Basically, communities can aggregate pools of capital and people to make sure that they can achieve scale and drive economics. There are 5 states that have CCA capabilities. But California is by far the one that's taken the biggest and boldest initiatives. Of the 22 California cities that are adopting CCAs, the last one that just recently completed an RFP, but they haven't announced winners yet, was Sonoma County. In Sonoma County, they are aggregating close to 220,000 accounts. And in their program, not only are they seeking competitive energy supply, but also competitive renewable energy attached to it. Very, very exciting opportunity for joint development between the solar community and the traditional energy suppliers. On financing, the best way of explaining it is every solar project that we install basically has 4 buckets of value that come with it. There's power purchase agreement payments shown in light brown there. There's a tail end of residual value that is unquantifiable from the get-go, which is in dark brown. That's non-contracted cash flows that might be expected. But on the front end, you see a box that I labeled tax benefits. On a net present value basis, those tax benefits represent about 40 to 45% of the total value of a solar system installation. And that is the scarce resource that is hard to find right now. We've set up multiple funds with partners, basically by flipping the equation around. We don't project finance our transactions. We actually standardize our product offering, sell the PPAs, and then drop our PPAs into a project fund that has a defined credit box. We've done this with a number of financial institutions, basically all the financial institutions that are actively working in this, which is about a dozen. And we've been able to incorporate a few marquee corporate names that have also ventured into this area. Google was, and Pacific Gas and Electric were among the first investors. Honda is among the latest. This is where we think the biggest opportunity is for system reduction is by increasing tax capacity and the number of participants in the market. We estimate that for every percentage point of interest rate that we have to pay for tax equity, that represents about 10 to 30 cents a watt on a total system installation. So it's a huge cost. From a life cycle basis, that tax capacity is shown in the middle here. Pre-installation, the way we finance our systems is really through a corporate revolver. But then to get out of the gate, to get down into the lower cost of capital, which is at the very bottom, the term financing market. To be able to get to that market, you need to have scale and you need to have systems up and running. You won't get there if we don't have tax capacity, which is the middle bar there. And to kind of put numbers to give relative percentages, the tax equity market right now is demanding between 8 and 9%, depending on the structures that we put together. And the term financing is substantially cheaper and for a longer period of time. Being able to find corporates and others that are willing to play in this field is really what I stay awake at night thinking about. But the market is huge. Between now, 2013 and 2016, when the current 30% ITC expires, we're estimating that there's going to be about $70 billion requirement of tax equity only, an enormous dollar amount. The traditional players, which like I said are about a dozen, are well poised to satisfy this, but they'll be taxed to meet the dollar numbers. So really what we need to accelerate the growth or maintain this expected trajectory is meaningful participation by corporates. One example that is currently available right now in the market that demonstrates that this is possible is the low-income housing market. The Community Reinvestment Act forces regional banks to invest in their local communities. That market has standardized and grown to the point where the yields that they get on their product are in the 5 to 6% range, compared to where we are, where there is no mandate, there is no obligation for anybody to invest in this, and right now we see 8 to 9% range. So there's a big delta that can be absorbed there. So regarding the SunShot challenge, I think this is not only achievable, it's inevitable. There's a lot of tailwind. I list the key drivers there. A lot of initiative, a lot of energy in the presence of you here is just testament to that. There are some near headwinds, which is really, at the end of the day, if you look at the utility framework and the pushback that we're getting on net metering and rate setting, that's going to be an evolving process. And I think from a solar perspective, I welcome the opportunity to partner with utilities. I don't think it necessarily has to be adversarial. Bottom line is, Adam Smith's famous invisible hand is already at work. So it's only a matter of time. So in closing, I'll just say that this month marks the 40th anniversary of the first cell phone communication. First true cell phone communication was done in April 1973. Not in a car, but really somebody walking with a brick on his hand. At that time, there were 22 regional bell operating companies. And that black phone was the standard in most people's homes. And look where we are today. The internet changed everything, cell phones changed everything, Apple changed everything. Where will we be 40 years from now if we continue to work on this problem? Thanks. Steve?
Can you imagine what the data rates would be like if you still have the 22 regional operating bells? Or if you'd even be able to get data service?
300 baud.
Exactly, thanks a lot. Sure. This is okay. Thank you very much. Now you might be wondering what a company like Honda is doing here in the middle of this discussion. So hopefully I'll be able to answer that. But I want to leave you with a thought. This is an emerging market, and emerging markets need liquidity. And right now there's liquidity in the forms of tax credits and depreciation, things that you put together to create tax equity. But as we all realize, the government isn't that reliable for long term in those things. So those will probably expire or be reduced, and there's a bit of a speed bump coming. And you have a couple of years in this market to replace that, or else you're going to find it's kind of like the thing that caused the recession when the banking system dried up or locked up. So here's why Honda's in this. A little bit about why I'm here and what we're doing. Honda has a idea we call our 2020 vision, and that's to be a company that society would want to exist. So in addition to being an engineering company and a company that provides mobility, the group I'm responsible for, which is environmental business development, covers a lot of different activities. We have a program we call our Green Dealer Program, where we're asking our dealers to reduce their CO2 output. As a company, we have a goal. Our own facilities, our distribution channel through our dealers and our partners, and also the CO2 that's created by the products that we manufacture over their lifetime. Honda you may not realize, has this solar panel manufacturing business in Japan called Honda Soltech. And part of the reason that I'm interested in that is because we can make money in the hardware business. Now also, I'll talk a little bit about our partnership with Solar City in a minute. We're also undertaking a project at UC Davis in Northern California where we're developing a smart, we call it a smart home. And this is a home that will communicate with the grid and will have various systems that will take cues from the grid to back down or to power up, depending on the grid load demand. And the unique thing about this home is it will be a zero net energy home. So it will have, in the end, it won't consume any electricity from the grid, and that is the house and mobility for one electric car for the mileage for the course of the year. So our feeling is as mobility becomes increasingly electrified, we have to be responsible that way, otherwise we're just passing the buck in terms of the emissions to the power grids. And I'm also responsible, you can see in the top right there, kind of looking for if there's a pointer. Is that okay? I was afraid. You never know what you're going to get. We have electric vehicles, which we're just introducing in this state, the Honda Fit EV, and an Accord plug-in hybrid, which is introduced in this state as well. And we have a natural gas Civic, and you might also know about our hydrogen fuel cell powered Clarity. So I spoke a little bit about these activities. One of the challenges that we see in reducing our CO2 output is in your daily life, you create CO2 in your mobility and from your heat and electricity in your home. So while we're working on the automobile output, and we think that we've done a very good job over the years in reducing the CO2, there's also the CO2 from heat and from the electricity in your home, which is why we think by combining solar and mobility, we could eventually drive this down to near zero CO2. So as a company that society would want to exist, this is a direction that we want to pursue. One of the things that we discovered early on in introducing the Fit EV is that there's a very high predisposition with folks that acquire electric vehicles to put solar on their home. So in our initial business plan, we thought, well, it would be nice to offer a complementary product or service that folks that lease our Fit EV or buy our Accord plugins could acquire. So we started to look around for a partner in the U.S. to offer this, and that was the beginning of an interesting journey. At the same time, because we have a finance company, we looked at what kind of a return on investment we could make by providing the financing for these types of products. And what we discovered is that it takes a very long time to recover those costs, and that's a big challenge. In our case, we turn our capital a lot faster, and if you were going to get someone to put solar on their home, there has to be a benefit to them, and the benefits typically, the payment should be less than where they have now in terms of their power bills. So it would take 8 or 9 years to recover that from our standpoint, and that's really too long, a lot of risks, and so on. So we thought about different types of activities. Now also in working with our dealers, we wanted to provide the same kind of a product because we want the dealers to reduce their CO2 output. And dealerships are pretty fascinating places. There's several businesses in one. You have a factory in the service department, you have parts department, you have showrooms for the cars and display lighting, and you have huge cubic foot quantities that have to be heated or cooled. So car dealerships tend to be very, very energy intensive. And quite often the energy bill goes on after they're closed because they have the displays lit up after hours. So when we looked at these types of investments for the car dealership, you can see this was kind of a break-even point in terms of our investment. We thought this is, again, too long. We don't want to be able to do this if these are the terms. So what do you do when you have a problem? You go to the internet, you start reading. So one of the things I did was I went to the DOE website and saw where all the money was going. There's that movie that said follow the money, right? So there were two things I discovered. The first thing I discovered was that the DOE had given the school here some money for a consortium to study SIG solar panels, which is a technology that we manufacture in Japan. So that was particularly appealing to me because about 35 years ago I graduated from this school. So I thought that was very interesting. Another thing that I saw on there was that Google had given Solar City some money to create a tax equity fund, and that appealed to me because I'm an economics major and a finance graduate major. So we have a relationship with Google on many fronts, and so we called them up and we went up and met with a team of folks there who were actually in their venture capital group, and we sat down with them and we said, what are you doing here? What's Google getting involved in providing money for solar? And they had all kinds of great reasons. One, they consume a lot of electricity. Data centers are very energy intensive, and what they wanted to do was to be able to neutralize some of their energy creation through either directly or through RECs and things like that. And then the guy says to me, yeah, it's also kind of a money play. So they have a lot of need for tax equity and tax benefits. Now, on the other hand, Honda has a little different philosophy with that. We like to pay taxes. It may seem strange, but we want to be a good citizen. We want to be part of the community, so we don't want to be accused of coming here and just taking money and not contributing back. So I thought a good cure for this very long payback problem that I showed you before was to do the same thing, because there's some benefits I'll talk to you about in a second. But when I pitched this to our board of directors, and this is the global board of directors, they accused me of being kinky and strange and playing with tax money. Why would I want to do this? And it took a very long time for them to realize that this kind of stuff over here is just standard operating procedure. That's how the government throws a bone out there. If you're profitable and you're paying taxes, here's a way to do something else with the money. So again, going back to being a company that society would want to exist and wanting to reduce our CO2 output, the output of our customers, our distribution, our dealers, and our products, we thought this would be a worthwhile investment for us. So we were introduced to Solar City through Google. And remember I said before that we make panels in Japan. And there were some things we found about Solar City that were very appealing. First was their customer orientation. And those of you that have experienced our products might realize or understand that we care a whole lot about our customers and their satisfaction. Over the long term, Solar City has the same philosophy. But the thing that was most appealing to me is that they were product agnostic. So they use the best at what's out there. They've got to support it for the long term. So that if we get in the solar panel business here in the United States, they would consider our products. And Felix mentioned before battery backup systems and other things that they do. So all of these fall into play because we use power equipment business here in the United States. And we're looking at things like power backup and fuel cell power for home and all kinds of other things. So philosophically, we were linked up in that they covered a lot of the channel for us, in a sense, maybe kind of like one national dealer. They do the installing, they do the O&M and the service, and take care of the warranty. And they also had a way to handle financing, because remember I said a minute ago, no liquidity, no business. So it seemed too good to be true, and it probably took us a year and a half, I think, to put together the tax equity partnership that was announced a few months ago. But one of the things that we've done is we've opened up our customer base to them to solicit solar products to Honda owners. So some of you may be getting emails now. And we've never done that before. And I was the guy that created our database 20 years ago. And I broke my own rule, and that was that we would never sell our list, and we'd never let anyone come after our customers. And trust me, banks all day long want to solicit our customers for their credit cards, because we've got some of the best credit customers in the world. But we thought this was something that our customers would appreciate, and it fit in with our common interests. And we put up money to create the fund to finance the products for them. So we thought this was a pretty good partnership, and we met with other companies and didn't find anyone who was as thoroughly covering the channel. So this is kind of the way a tax equity partnership works. You have a company like a Solar City that's doing the installation and the sales. you have this tax equity partnership. So think of this as a bank. You have the consumers. Here's American Honda that puts in some of the money. The solar partner makes some investments. Also, and you have these guys out here. There's some utility money to lubricate things, and there's the IRS that's managing either grants and other incentives. This is the one that scares me the most because the hand, Adam Smith's hand has two sides. Okay, and it can slap you also. And you can be pretty deep into this and find out you're not doing things the way they want or the way they want now, and they can claw back at you, and that's a pretty scary term, to be clawed back. And when I pitched this thing, someone had said to me, you know, Steve, this is pretty interesting. I think it's going to be a career-limiting move for you in the long run, so I'm hoping not. But we spent a lot of time doing a lot of due diligence to find out some of the risks out there and dealing with the Treasury and the IRS and so on, and we think we have it under control. So the customer makes payments to this partnership entity, and the partnership distributes some back here for the payment of the systems, some back here in terms of the return on investment. And by leveraging some of these investments going in, you can further accelerate the capital that's available. And I think without these types of vehicles going forward, the whole industry is going to be in a lot of trouble because these purchases are too big for your credit card and you can't get home equity loans anymore for the most part. So I think it's very important that these things be made possible by the government, and to the extent that you can even model it after the mortgage business. And I know that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and all those guys have black eyes right now, but really that's what created the ability for everyone to own a home in this country, and that's the secondary financing market that buys your mortgage. So I think that's really, if the government wants to be helpful, they can create some of that ability so companies like Solar City can focus on what they do best, which is deploying the solar. So things to think about when you do these things, your partnership structure, how long are you in for? In our case, I could turn that 8 years into 6, and I'll show you a chart in a minute that shows how fast the capital can be returned based on the depreciation and the tax credits. What do you want in your portfolio? So ours is primarily meant to be Honda owners. We put the money up for folks in our family. The different benefits for the investors, your return period, the deployment period, and your exit strategy, as I said before. After a while, we're out. So while we're very concerned about the decisions we make in terms of hardware and creditworthiness, at some point we don't have any further responsibility. So it's good for us if we just want to be a short-term money player, and I'm hoping we'll have a longer-term involvement with these things. So if you take a look at this, here's kind of just the first year investment, what happens here. So we put in, let's say, $25 million, but because of the partner not putting in, or not wanting some of the benefits, or not needing some of the benefits, we get a disproportionate share of it. So we get all these tax credits, we get priority distribution, and then we get some shares of the revenue. So you can see that in the first year we get most of this money back, and that's a pretty hellacious turn on our capital. So it made our finance guys very happy. And my theory was, well, let's take the money that we got back and put it back in, put it back in, put it back in, keep cycling it. Now you notice this ends, and that's because those tax credits end after a while. So if the government wants to do something to encourage stability and long-term commitment, they can draw those laws out and stretch them out a little further. So the challenges in doing these things, this is kind of a new product. It's a little history. The IRS interpretations are a little risky. Your hand has two sides. Tax codes change all the time. I know I bought investment property in the 80s, and then Bush 1 raised the taxes and signed a law that included at-risk limitations, and that was the end of the real estate limited partnership business. So you have to be very careful when you're thinking long-term with people that make rules in the short term. But anyway, this is something we wanted to do, and we're very confident it's a good thing for us. So thank you very much.
Carolyn?
topic of industry-leading dealer network. So I think it's an appropriate title, but I would say that we're a little more of a partner network, but it's close. To talk about our partner network, I sort of need to talk about who SunPower is. And I know because we're kind of a lone voice in many ways and highly differentiated from the rest of the field, when I ask people what they know about us, I often get some very interesting responses, and responses that aren't always terribly accurate. So I kind of want to say who we are, because I also think it informs why we chose the partnership model that we did. I have to admit, when I sold SunPower years ago, I really thought we were a better monocrystalline solar panel. And what I've come to really appreciate is we're really an entirely different technology. We do start out with monocrystalline, but we sort of depart at that point. I don't know how many people are familiar with the Maxion cell technology, but when we took the cell, we didn't really take the contacts off the front and just put them on the back, like flipping over the cell. That's not how it happened. Our contacts are completely encased in copper that's been plated with tin, and they're on the back of the cell, every cell. So if you have 96 cells in a panel, and none of the surface structure is being obscured by lines, you have a very different panel at the end of the day. So currently we just released a panel that produces 345 watts in the same area that other panels are producing 240 to 250 watts. So when we say power density, we don't mean a little, we mean a lot. And so the important part to understand about this cell technology is because it's so different, it also has a vastly superior durability. And that's sort of a conversation I don't hear in these rooms. I hear a lot about driving the price down, but at the end of the day, sometimes you get what you pay for. And because the contacts are encased in copper that's been plated with tin on the back, they actually offer structural integrity to each cell. So if you wanna understand better what I mean, you can YouTube a cell breakage demo that you can find on YouTube of us breaking one of our cells and breaking competitor cells, and you'll start to see what I mean by how different we are. When you crack one of our cells, I always do this in a plastic bag because we have all that metal that's a little sharp, but if you take a competitor, a standard Q cell, and you crack it, it breaks into so many pieces that when you shake the bag, it tinkles like a light bulb. If there's a break, the cell is done. If the cell goes, well, they all act collectively, so you've got some issues there. The two greatest causes of failure are breakage and corrosion. So when we encase our contacts in the back, they're corrosion resistant, and the cells don't really break because the copper is structural. So that's what I mean by you can snap it, pull it out of the bag, and I can hand it to you. If you snap another cell, you are not pulling it out of the bag unless you're pulling out a lot of little pieces. So just kind of wanted to get that across, and that's how we get more power. So I think everybody knows that SunPower offers more power and offers a significant amount more power, and yet the results of Photon magazine just came out, and we're 1, 2, and 3rd. We're first, second, and third place, which I don't think again surprised anybody. But the comment is kind of the comment we always get, which is it worth the price? Well, if you're looking at somebody's financial proposition and the product doesn't last, then they're not going to see the fruition of that investment, right? They won't get what they expect. So people keep talking about 25 years. Our panels are designed to last 40 to 50 years. We just give you a 25-year warranty, and a warranty that doesn't bear any resemblance to any other warranty in the business. It's a 25-year period, no 10-year product mischief. 25-year money-back guarantee. And we're going to replace that panel at our cost. No cost to the consumer. If we need to replace the panel, we replace it. And if we can't replace it, we give you your money back. And it's 25 years, and it's 2 pages of plain English. There's no misunderstandings or mischief. So why can we do that? We can do that because out of 1 million panels, we have a failure rate of 27. Of all of the other manufacturers that we operate and maintain, about 20 of them, when we looked at the failure rate, it was 8,700 per million. When we looked at a high quality standard efficiency panel, so we're just looking at one, that was 20. When we looked at just one, there was still an 1,800 per million failure rate. So this is all third party verified by Black & Veatch. So we've been very quiet for a very long time about how different our product is from other people, but as we continue to hear people always reduce it to cost, dollar per watt, there really needs to be another voice to say there are other things to consider. And it sort of explains why we have a partnership model. So the people who want to sell a highly differentiated premium product that looks to quality and durability versus dollar per watt, this is a really good fit. There's a little picture. Oh, sorry. Let me go back to the fact that how do we do this? Part of the key to this is we take care of the entire life cycle. So we start with a higher quality monocrystalline. We make an ingot, and we make the entire process is ours. We own it. So of that 27 failures in a million, you know we have 200 patents and a lot of engineers going, why did they fail? And they go back and they can identify every single stage in the lifetime. And that's how we continue to put more money into research and development than anybody else. And that's how we continue to innovate and continue to break records. So we've broken the world record twice now. I suspect you'll see us continue to do it. The for life is what I've been alluding to about, it's not just the panels that need to last a long time. So the partnership model really lends itself to this concept of reliability. Reliability of, yes, the products, but also reliability of a partner that's going to be there to assist along the way. So we do consulting and coaching, but I think one of the best things we do is training. So say somebody already knows how to put in solar and they specifically are well trained, but now you want to ramp. How are you going to do this? When you add somebody, say you're a small company, because I'm residential only, by the way. When you add an installer, let's say, do you have time to take out and train that installer? I mean, there are complexities to this. So we provide world-class training. It's got certifications that no other manufacturers have for training. We provide marketing assistance, so customer acquisition. We do some interesting things like we have models of like community events. So that's a great model, but if you want to apply it locally, well, you have the local expertise of these partners. It's there, for instance, on a community event, they know where to hold the event, for instance. If we walked in from outside, we don't know nobody goes to the library in that town, but in fact, City Hall, right, where everybody wants to go and has that stamp of approval, for instance. We also have interesting programs like an alliance program. So you've seen a lot of company names. We've worked with a lot of different companies, not so many I really fill the screen. We have car partnerships, a lot of the same things you've seen, all of which are terrifically helpful to solar installers who really are in charge of the business of installing solar all day, every day. That's a big enough job. So any help they can get is welcome, clearly. And then financing. I thank you for having all the detail of the financing. We too carry a lease, very similar issues are faced. Tax equity changed things pretty radically. We are owned by the 11th largest company in the world. So though we're a $2 billion global company already ourselves, we're owned by, as I said, the 11th largest company in the world called Total. Total is really like the Exxon or Mobil of France, and they give us a lot of clout, so that when we want to find money to fund our lease, certainly makes it a lot easier. And this partnership model, really the customer experience at the end of the day, to know that these folks are part of the community, obviously very invested. There's a very local nature to construction, we think, and that's why it makes sense to us. They know the codes. We're not coming in from outside trying to do this. We're working with people who are already there, and we're going to stay there and maintain these systems over a very long time, hopefully much longer than 25 years. That's just a warranty period. 40 to 50 years is an awfully long time. The warranty, as I said, is unparalleled, and that provides the peace of mind that a lot of people are looking for when they make an investment. Solar is something that a lot of people don't understand too much about. So talking about the price, well, it's a place everybody's comfortable. We talk about the price of anything we buy. So it's something we feel that we can talk about when we don't maybe know too much about the solar. And I love the new models that are entering the industry that are making this simpler. Because the things that are complex about solar don't actually, I don't think, need to be communicated. I think they actually bar the way in many ways and make people feel that this is confusing and complicated. And a lot of people feel mildly overwhelmed if you tell them too much about. So, I mean, when I go to buy a car, do I pop the hood and have somebody explain to me how it works? Thank God, no. It took me 15 minutes to buy my car. Because I told them what I wanted, and then they gave me what I needed. So usually if you ask a customer, what do you want? They want to zero out their electric bill. right? They didn't say I want to know how solar works. They didn't say I would like to discuss temperature coefficients, you know? So I think increasingly, if we want to improve customer acquisition, we're going to simplify this to the consumer. You know, we'll take care of the hard part, and we'll make absolutely sure that any concerns they have, anything they do want to know about, we tell them about, but maybe keep the rest of it for ourselves. And then finally, referrals. I mean, if you do this all right, if you give the best product that can be made, the most powerful, most durable product, and you make sure you have partners that take training seriously, who are really in it for the long haul and aren't maybe, you know, jumping into it because it's the next interesting thing, but or because their business isn't doing well. That kind of commitment is what we think it's going to take at the end of the day. So we're really looking to create more energy for life, and we're really quite convinced. A lot of people think that, you know, there's a lot of worry, I think, that SunPower is going to suddenly have some radical departure from our current plan. We're all in on solar. We don't do anything else. We're not going to decide, gee, the solar's not going so well, why don't we go and do this, right? We're all in, but we're just diversified in the sense that we are global, and we have a residential and a commercial and a utility scale divisions, and that allows us a lot of flexibility, believe it or not. You know, even though we're in solar, when Europe's not doing so well, this country kind of said, okay, you know what, we'll take all that extra product and we'll find a home for it, and sure enough we did. So the local expertise of our partners, the training standards that we both share and believe in very much, the marketing strategies, so our like best in practice knowledge combined with what they intuitively know about their own communities and how to communicate most effectively. Financing options clearly are huge. We have a suite. Our feeling is there isn't a way to buy solar. Every customer, they're grown-ups. They get to decide how they want to do this. I'm not going to tell them what to buy or how to buy it. So if they want to write a check, that's great. But if they want a loan, we have different types of loans. And we have a lease, of course, it's very popular. And all of these different options make it so that people can do this exactly the way they want to do it. The quality, obviously, is extremely important to us. So it's something that reverberates through everything we do and everything we believe in and everything we approach. And I think the ultimate customer satisfaction that leads to, this is something we track. This is something we're aware of. Our tiers require a certain level of customer satisfaction to remain in that tier, to remain cognizant of and wedded to these standards. I think in the long term will benefit all of us, and that's our great hope. And thank you for having me today, and thanks for coming.
Hi, thank you. My name is James Tom with Clean Power Finance. I'm glad to be here. Unfortunately, my bags haven't come yet. So I'm here with whatever clothes I have brought in my carry-on this year. I'm here to talk about online customer acquisition. Before I start that, I want to give an overview of our company and who we are. What we are is an online marketplace for the solar industry. We are, in many ways, the channel that connects the different players in the industry. We connect the investors that provide project finance capital, the suppliers, the servicers, and allow the installers to then use those products and supplies to sell to the homeowners. We have over 1,300 installers using our software to do quoting to homeowners, but we also have 100+ installers using our financing to sell to the homeowners. Now, the question you might be asking is, why is Clean Power Finance here talking about online customer acquisition when we don't really sell to the homeowner? Well, a couple of things. Number one, I used to work for a solar installer myself. I ran marketing for that solar installer. Number two, we are a facilitator to the entire industry. We are currently developing an online brokerage for customer acquisition through a SunShot grant, the Business Incubator Program. We're also supporting our partners with analytics to improve sales processes and products. We get a lot of data from our quoting tools. We have quoting data from all 50 states, and we use these analytics to inform our partners. And finally, we are collaborating with Emerald on a big data research. You may have heard about it. The acronym is called SEEDS. What that is a solar diffusion study, or really a consumer adoption research on solar. So much of what I'm doing is very similar to what Clean Power Finance does. We bring together a lot of information, package it, and deliver it to the respective audience. So a lot of my presentation is brought together by different sources, and I'm now delivering it to you. And you probably have seen something like this already. Dr. Margola's talked about soft costs. I'm not going to go into details about that, but you'll see that customer acquisition is a large component of soft costs, and there's this category called other. It's also very big, but I'm going to argue that, in fact, customer acquisition is arguably the most important of the soft costs, because customer acquisition influences a lot of the other sources of soft costs. Unpredictable consumer demand creates frictional costs throughout the solar value chain. This is what a lot of economists call the bullwhip effect. What happens is that you have, at the very downstream level, you have some fluctuations in demand. Most retailers have to carry some sort of inventory. Those who sell to the retailers then have to carry enough inventory to sell to the retailers. So they have even more fluctuation in demand. And then finally, the manufacturers have to carry even more inventory to sell to these guys. So what you have then here is a small motion in demand here, causing a big ripple here. And somebody had asked, well, what's going on with the panel manufacturers? I suspect this is what's happening. It's the bullwhip effect. They overproduce because they're trying to meet this demand that they cannot figure out. Similarly, the SREC market, if you think of SREC as being a supply, a component of a solar deal, there's constant fluctuation in the price of SREC because the supply of SREC cannot keep pace with demand. And that's why it's extremely important that we understand the end consumer. And I'm quite certain that creating a steadier stream of customers will greatly reduce soft costs, but also greatly reduce the hardware costs, because now manufacturers can better judge and forecast their supply and their production. So essentially, understanding the end consumer is essential. And this is why I'm very happy to be part of the Department of Energy SEEDS program, because I think the Department of Energy recognizes that it really starts with the end consumer. So this is the classic marketing consumer purchase funnel. This is textbook diagram. For a consumer to go from purchase, they have to start with awareness of the product, then interest, and they have to evaluate the product. Typically, there's a trial period, and then finally, there's adoption. And advocacy could be retention, it could be loyalty, it could be referrals. This is more of the sales solar funnel. It's very similar. So you get new leads, and any installer can tell you this is similar to how they work. So they get a new lead, they have to contact that lead, and they have to schedule an appointment. Then they generate a proposal, and if the consumer accepts, they close the sale. And ideally, they get a referral that goes back into the new leads. Now there's a considerable drop-off from the time they get to the leads to the close of sale. What we found, talking to our installers and to lead generating companies, typically most installers get less than 5% of the initial leads converted into a sale, which is extremely hard, considering that leads can cost anywhere from $50 to $200. We're talking about marketing acquisition costs of anywhere from $2,000 or $5,000. Some put it at $6,000 per sale. So I think a good takeaway from this slide is one thing, is that solar is a very large investment and requires heavy consideration. And typically there is no trial. You can't test drive a solar system like the way you can with a car. Either you get a solar system and you're stuck with it for the rest of your life or for a 20-year lease, or you're not going solar. And so there's a lot of emphasis here on awareness, interest, and evaluation. And that's why education and research is extremely important for the end consumer. And consumers seek credible information and references. And the references could be another person who's gone solar or like-minded people who've gone solar. And that's what's needed to switch to solar. I think online tools are an effective way in educating consumers and driving consumer adoption, because this is the way they could do their research in their own environment, not necessarily having to listen to a salesperson who may or may not be telling them the truth. So there is a lot of online research. The only other thing I wanted to add is that, in the solar sales funnel, to get to, most people, just to become a lead, they have to have gone from awareness to interest. There's a whole section out there of people who are aware of solar that we just don't know about, and we don't know how to find them yet. And this is part of the reason why we're doing seeds. How do we find this? And this is where the online marketing is most effective. It's trying to get those people who are in the awareness interest phase, not yet a lead yet, become a lead. And once they become a lead, then we can do the normal sales process. Online marketing tools do help with the sales process, but they're more effective in generating leads. So, some strategies on how to help customers do research online. I think an overlooked strategy is having a good company website. This is your storefront to the end consumer. This is the way to educate consumers on both solar and your company. Websites also have the added advantage of providing you metrics on who's visiting your site, what promotions are working, how often, where are they coming from, so you can get an understanding of your end consumer or potential customer. And businesses should keep in mind, this is your front door. You should make it easy for them to come in. By making it easy, make sure your phone number is clearly apparent on your website. Also have a way for them to submit a request. Hey, I want more information. Here's my information. Other tactics online tactics is search engine marketing. And what search engine marketing is, if you do a Google search, you have different items that come up. There's these ads up here and ads on the side. Those are search engine marketing. So you do a keyword, you pay typically Google or Bing or whatever, or some type of vendor that works with them to get placement there. Yeah, and it's a pay per click. So if I'm searching, in this case, I'm searching residential solar installer in Albany. So every time somebody clicks on that, your business gets charged, regardless of whether or not it becomes a lead. Now, it could be effective because oftentimes people who are searching for solar installers are already looking for solar. So they are past the awareness phase. They're in the interest phase. They're probably in the evaluation phase. The challenge is it's a very expensive learning curve. There's a lot of companies that do this for a living, and to compete against it, there is a bidding process. To compete against them, you may have to spend a lot of money learning how to beat those other guys that are also doing this as well. Now, search engine optimization is a better strategy, but a lot harder. What search engine optimization is below the paid ads. These are the organic searches. You want your company appear on top of those organic searches. Now, the way to appear on top is really creating a website, your home website, make it relevant so that Google thinks that, hey, whenever there's a solar installer, this is the most important website out there. And it's an art, it's a trick. There's no magic bullet, but typically a lot of the things you have to do is making your website relevant by creating links to your website, having other people links to your website, having authoritative websites like an .edu domain or an nrel.gov link to your website. That certainly helps with your search engine optimization. Again, it's extremely hard to execute. Other forms of internet online acquisition tools, display ads. So this is putting your logo on somebody else's website. And this is great for branding and awareness, but it can be potentially costly for lead generation. It's very similar to search engine marketing. Every time somebody clicks onto that site, you get charged for that click, even if it's an accidental click. And it takes a learning curve. And it requires some economies of scale, because what happens is that these people who sell these spots on these websites, they sell it through bulk volume. So if you have the economies of scale to advertise on multiple websites, it becomes cheaper. But if you're a small installer, display ads, display ads may not be the best choice. Now, social media, I think this is a very exciting way of doing online acquisition, and we have yet to fully understand the power of social media. Recent research by the University of Texas suggests credibility of information, not the availability of information, is important. Consumers in deciding solar rely on testimonies of others to persuade them to go solar. They rely on referrals to go to solar. So if there's a way we can make information exchange between those who have already adopted and potential customers, this will accelerate adoption. Now, this is where social media could play. For example, one way of social media is having a good review on Yelp, because I know for a fact that a lot of potential consumers go out there, they're evaluating different installers, and they're doing a Google search. Hey, what is Solar ABC's reviews like? And they look at Solar ABC's review, and they see maybe 10 people gave it 5 stars, while Solar XYZ gets 2 stars. They're more likely going to go to Solar ABC's, because it's that peer affirmation. That's what a lot of people are looking for when it comes to solar. Remember, there is no trial period when it comes to solar. They must be reliant on the information that's available, and the best information available to them are probably information from peers. Now, this is my final notes. Online customer acquisition is not the only approach. While my topic was focused on online customer acquisition, I want to remind everybody that this is just one toolkit of many. What you need is a more integrative approach for customer acquisition. The online tactics should work in conjunction with the offline tactics. For example, when we're talking about Honda here, Honda could probably merchandising or contacting their customers, but then they probably have a website as well to allow people to read more about solar, because you're not going to be able to explain everything to a customer on a pure marketing piece that's 1 page long. There's a lot of companies right now doing door-to-door canvassing, and they're saying, hey, it's extremely effective, more effective than online marketing. Well, that may be true, but a lot of these customers that are hearing about solar through door-to-door canvassing are also going online to do more research on solar before they make their decision. This is also extremely important too. It's this concept of category sale versus competitive sale. This is a fundamental marketing concept. And the idea is that in adopting and selling a new technology, consumers need to be sold on the category first. In this case, it's solar, before they can be sold on the different option. This is competitive sale. What this means is that skipping to a competitive sale may be counterproductive. And to give you a point, case in point, if you're an end consumer who just barely knows about solar, and I start telling you why purchasing your system is better than leasing your system, that's only going to confuse you. Unless you're in the mindset of, hey, I'm evaluating solar installers, I'm evaluating solar options, then you have that conversation. But if I'm still thinking, should I go solar or should I stay with my utility? That type of conversation is irrelevant, it's counterproductive, it'll confuse the consumer and oftentimes scares them away. Because when consumers are confused, the default option is to stay with the status quo. Similarly, trying to pitch your installer versus another installer when a consumer hasn't been sold on solar, very counterproductive. And I think what in a larger sense, what I'm trying to say is that I think the industry sometimes shoot itself in the foot by trying to say I'm better than the other guy, when there's a lot of people who haven't really been sold on solar in the first place. And finally, I think this is an extremely important note. While we talked about online customer acquisitions, don't forget the old-fashioned way. Referrals are still the most cost-effective means for customer acquisitions. The conversion rates on referrals are much better. The time to get the lead to a sale is much quicker, and it just leads to a better experience because the referral can then explain to the referee what is the process. And one of the things I I see, not just in the solar industry, but I used to work at GE Capital, where we work with a lot of small businesses. And the number one reason why small businesses don't get enough referrals, simply because they're not asking for referrals. They would, this seems like crazy, but what tends to happen is, one, a lot of installers or a lot of small businesses are just bashful about asking for referrals. And two, if they do ask for referrals, it's typically one time. So after an installation, they will say, hey, Jane, you just went solar, you're pretty happy, right? Well, have you thought about a customer, have you thought about a friend that could go solar? And Jane would say, yeah, I'll think about it. And then the conversation pretty much ends there. There's no follow-up. That's a big reason why referrals are not happening as much as we would like. So in conclusion, I would say a lot of great tools for online customer acquisition. But remember, this is just one toolkit of many, and you should work in conjunction with the other things that you are doing. And one of the things that you should be always doing is getting referrals.
We can have the speakers. So we can open up for questions. This is certainly a fascinating topic. To echo what Mr. Kaufman was talking about this morning, the Febreze model, and how even if you have a good product, how do you create that sort of emotional connection? So my first question to the panelists is how you create that emotional connection with your product, giving the customer what they really want, given that there's different segments in the marketplace, and how you identify these segments. So if any one of the speakers can start, then we can start with that.
Sure, I'll start. From Solar City's perspective, the whole differentiation starts with simplifying the process. Before the Solar City's model was developed for the residential market, a typical sales cycle would involve a discussion of the technology, the installation process, the competence and quality of the installation. What Solar City did is they realized that those were attributes that would be required for any good brand to execute on. But what the customer really wanted was a clear price signal that was better than what they were getting from the utility, simplicity, predictability, and optionality. So what we offer is basically a very simple solution. No capital, no money from your pocket. We'll install a system at our cost using our standards, and we'll deliver energy that you will pay for performance at a cheaper rate than from your utility. Very simple proposition. And we've been very successful across 14 markets in doing that. In doing that kind of sale, we back it up then with our own trucks rolling in to the customer site and doing the installation, and we brand the whole experience. So from the moment that the customer is talking to us pre-sale to after the sale when the system is running, the customer is always seeing Solar City as the person that's driving, as the entity that's driving everything. And it's a cohesive, well thought out experience.
In a word, joy. Easy to buy, easy to own, durable, reliable.
I think Carolyn brought up some good point. It's about creating value for the customer. I think we are, as an industry, are really obsessed in driving down costs. And costs, when we do that, we commoditize the product and make it seem like everything's the same. And what we're seeing is that there are different customer segments out there that value different things. For example, there are some people who just want to stick it to the utilities, and that they would be willing to pay a premium just to stick it to the utilities. For example, there are a lot of military folks who come back from Afghanistan or the Middle East. They say, well, we need energy independence, and they go solar because of energy independence. So it's not just a matter of saying how much savings I will bring to you, or how much cheaper my system is. It's about understanding what's important to that particular segment and selling him on that value of why going solar makes sense for you. And I think when you reach to those values, that creates the connection.
I love what you just said, James, and agree. I think there's room for a lot of different models, which is what's really exciting, to watch solar progress so that we have this kind of diversification. I do a lot, I'm a regional sales manager, by the way. Try not to say that beforehand, nobody listen to me. But as a result, I do a lot of sales training, and it's really, to me, people talk a lot about closing, and everybody wants another day on closing, and it can be challenging asking somebody for business, but if you do discovery properly, it almost closes itself. I mean, to really find out who somebody is and what they want, you made a really good point. People have really different motivations and different goals, but typically people say, I'd like to get rid of my electric bill, and so, that doesn't necessarily mean the cheapest system. That actually might mean that you have to pay a little bit more for the kind of equipment that's going to cover your entire electric bill. You have a finite amount of space, and you may make some decisions down the road that you want an electric vehicle. So we found that people do like to have options and choice. So you want to simplify, but at the same time, you don't want to assume that somebody wants maybe the cheapest thing today if over time what they really want is the best value. Or, paying for a system with cash will still save you more money at the end of the day than any of your other options. So I like to ask the question, do you want to save more money? Do you have a sense that you want to save more money today or over time? If you're not asking questions, then you're not going to find out what your customer wants. So I love the question, what does the consumer want? But at the end of the day, there's no simplified answer to that. You're going to have to ask. And then you're going to have to listen.
Questions?
Mine's not a question, it's more of on the educational part of it. We talked about all the marketing and how to get consumers to understand what solar is, but what about the business partnerships with school districts, so that as we teach our younger students, especially our middle school, high school students, about the importance of solar? Our young kids are so into energy conservation and the environment. They learn about it, they understand it, they go home and they talk to mom and dad, and they start to understand the savings. That beats all the online, because the parents are the ones that are going to be hesitant and they're going towards the residential. So I didn't know if anybody was looking at business partnerships with school districts, coming in and working side by side with teachers and students, and that will be that's a real great motivator to get this up and running, especially in the residential part of it.
I can sort of talk to that if you'd like. I actually used to speak at schools a lot. It just was, in my former existence, pre-SunPower, I was a solar installer also. I was a photovoltaic system designer and marketing director. And I used to go speak to students that the irony there is, I also have a couple, and they know solar makes sense. It's kind of a no-brainer to them. Like my daughter, as a child, before I was even in solar, when she grew a house, there were solar panels on it. So kids get it. Kids get it way more than their parents do. And the interesting part is you sell the kid. The problem is these kids don't write the check. At the end of the day, it's their parents. And strangely, our demographic is still older than that. This still, if you look at who actually purchases solar, it's still a group that is more affluent, that is more educated, and is older. That is changing, but that is still the group. And this is the group we really need to convince. Because over time, those folks are going to, by the time those kids are making the financial decision, I'm pretty sure it's a no-brainer to them. Did you guys want to answer that?
I'll just add one thing. Get them where they're learning. Science projects. It's pretty simple stuff. They can see what happens. We sponsor solar-powered car races all the time. So it's just get them where they're playing. Get them with their hands on.
In California, we've been active in actually doing school-based education curriculums. And it's scalable in California because they have unified school districts. In the Northeast, it's a little bit more challenging. But yeah, no, we hear you.
Oh, and I didn't mean to make it sound like we're not doing that. My company has huge, California. That's why I'm saying it's sort of a no-brainer because and educators, they love solar. So they're way more likely to be teaching it than you'd imagine.
More questions?
Got a question for Honda. In terms of the introduction of the electric vehicle in New York, what's the timing of that? And also the partnership with Solar City, what's the timing of introducing that to New York? And also, how do the economics of both of those propositions compare in New York State versus elsewhere in the country where you're rolling those two products out?
Good questions. First of all, the answer is now and now. So we've announced the solar partnership, and we have just introduced the Fit EV and the Accord plug-in hybrid in New York State. So those things are happening. And I think the economics from a solar point of view and from a electro-mobility point of view are all over the place. And one of the things I'm trying to do, because I'm responsible for the sale of those vehicles also, is to get the information together so people can make informed decisions. For instance, in California, if you acquire an electric vehicle, aside from the federal credits and so on, the state will give you, I think, $2,500, and that will more than offset the cost of the home charger. But we're finding a lot of resistance from people because they say the home charger's too high. But if you show them where they can get the money to pay for the charger. So I think there's a lot of money out there, and every state's different, and every county's different, every utility's different. So there's incentives in one area, not in another, and it's trying to just get all that information together so people can make a fully informed decision. And then these things make a lot more sense to them.
I heard two different people say things that I want to try to connect them a little bit. James, you mentioned how the importance of the reliability, not just a commodity, it's a product where people know that they have to make the right choice the first time. You don't take it back if you make the wrong choice. So that stuck with me. And then Carolyn, you talked about how your system is more efficient, more reliable, blah, blah, blah. It strikes me that those 2 points are very much counter to the whole commoditization discussion that we're sort of having today. How do we lower costs? How do we lower costs? How do we lower costs? And then when Honda talks about the integrated systems of the vehicle and the house and all of this, now I'm thinking you want to pack as much power in as you can as you set yourself up for growing uses down the road as more and more things get electrified, such as your car and what else. It just strikes me that it gets really back to what Mr. Kaufman said about market segmentation, that we have so many different ways that this industry will go in the future, and we're not all thinking the same thing. I mean, I was thinking about the Honda model for my own personal situation. I don't know how many people are thinking that way, but it's...
I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I don't think it's a matter of commodity or premium or just price. I think we have to work together to drive cost out because that will increase the deployment. You can do that with premium products and you can do that with entry-level products. Right now there's a focus on getting cost out, but we build premium automobiles and we build premium lawnmowers and we do very well with that against things that are less expensive. So in the end, you do get what you pay for, and here's a product you're purchasing if you're a consumer for your home that's 20, 25 years. It's very expensive. You're going to live with that mistake a long time if you just choose price. And I think get the cost out and people will buy the premium products. You don't sell a 20-year product on price.
I'll just say one last thing. As an owner of an Acura for many years, I sold my 1992 Acura like 2 years ago. If there
It
is
didn't owe
an
you any money at that point.
What's that?
It didn't owe you anything.
Oh, no. If there is an Acura of solar collectors, that is the one I will buy. I don't care about the price, that's the one I will buy.
Talk to me later.
So I'll beat you on that one. I still have my 1990 Acura. 350,000 miles. It's still
I just want to add to what Steve just said. They're not mutually exclusive. And if you look at the different industries, how the evolution of different industries, even the automobile, what you had was initially there was a lot of boutique brands back in the 1900s, and then there was a huge consolidation. There was some standardization with the Model T, and that commoditized the car, but it just made it more accessible to more people. Once people got into the category of buying cars, then they said, okay, then GM came in and said, well, there's cars for different type of people. I think the driving down the cost
to allow, to make it more accessible to more people. Once it is accessible to people, then you can differentiate on value.
I have time for one last.
No, I was just gonna add, one of the additional ways to drive out cost is volume. So we are actually gonna continue to drive a lot of companies are at their lowest, if people have agreed. We're not there yet. We're still doing it because we're doing it responsibly. So it's taking a little longer.
One last question.
Sure. It's actually not a question, I just wanted to add on your point of reliability and customer segmentation. With some consumers, when you talk about a product that is going to work for 25 years, some consumers react, I'm not going to be there. Average homeowner stays in their house for 7 years. But for some consumers, they want to know that it will survive, the product will work for 25 years, but they could care less.
And that's the segmentation. I changed the roof on my house 8 years ago, and I bought a 50-year roof, GAF shingle, and the roofer says to me, what are you doing? Everyone around here buys a 3-year roof. I said, I don't want to choose between a hip and a roof 20 years from now.